I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next on the agenda is a brief summary of current events by the Mayor, City Council, and/or City Manager. The public body does not propose, discuss, deliberate, or take legal action on any matter brought up during the summary unless the specific matter is properly noticed for legal action. Council, do we have anything to report? All right, just briefly, I was able to attend the ribbon cutting ceremony for the NRCD's Conservation Education Center. I'm botching the name already. Ron, you're going to have to help me out with that. You're good. Okay. But it's a great program that Aaron Cody's in charge of over there. It's at the old fire station across from Cottonwood Community School. It was well attended. They've got really, if anybody's ever has a chance to see that, if you saw the building prior, and you can see it now, it's just like night and day. They've really done a great job remodeling it. But it's a great center for the youth. They've got a couple of really great diagrams there to kind of show where our water comes from, how we recapture it and reclaim it, pump it back into the aquifer. They've got some neat tables with a watershed diorama that you can kind of play around with to understand the watershed a little bit better. So anyway, they're going to do programming there for the schools in the area to teach our kids about conservation. So it's a good program. As well, just wanted to let everyone know that there's also weekend programming at the Verde Valley Science Vortex. If you haven't heard of that program, again, great for the kids in the area, great for the parents in the area too, to get a little bit of science in your kids. It's a good thing. So they do have weekend after-school programming, but weekend programming is really underutilized here in the community. So just trying to get the word out about that. Yes.
Are we free to go in, and is anybody free to go in and look at it any time or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, open to the public. All right, Mr. Corbin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. A couple of things. City Council retreat will be held this Friday. Starts at 8:30. The program starts at that time, and it'll go until we end. We hope before 4 is our goal there. And we already had one topic drop out because of a speaker, so we're already down to maybe 3:30. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, but excited about that. And then the Cottonwood Planning and Zoning Commission will hold their regular meeting on Monday, January 24th, beginning at 6 p.m. at the council chambers. Please visit CottonwoodAZ.gov for an agenda. And if you hadn't heard, it'll be our chairman's last meeting. He has decided not to seek reappointment as he'll be moving. So we will be recognizing him at this council meeting in February, but if you wanted to stop in and say a kind word at his meeting, be greatly appreciated. He's done a lot of great things, and we'll talk more about it next week. And then I just want to let council know that next week I'll be out of the office Monday and Tuesday, and then at a conference Wednesday afternoon through Friday in Sedona for the city manager's winter meeting. Rudy will be in town the whole week, and of course I'll be working those days at the conference.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, if there's nothing else, we're going to move on to call to the public. And this portion of the agenda is set aside for the public to address the council regarding an item that is not listed on the agenda for discussion. However, the council cannot engage in discussion regarding any item that is not officially listed on the agenda for discussion and/or action, and comments are limited to a 3-minute time period. So there's yellow forms in the back. If there's anyone in the audience tonight that would like to address the council on an item that's not listed on the agenda, you're more than welcome to fill a form out, and we'll call you up in the order in which I receive them. So first up is Diane Schneider. Welcome.
Good evening. Diane Schneider, 1930 North Star Drive, Clarkdale. The subject is going to be public safety, or just safety in general. As you know, safety is paramount, always. There was an instance where I had to go to the Clarkdale council meetings to complain about debris in the road, which isn't safe, but that's a totally different subject. One other way I don't feel safe is due to the amount of aircraft flying all around. I want to read off just from a quick Google search, airplane crashes in the Phoenix area. I'll start with just last year. October 18th, small plane crashes in Pima County. November 15th, small plane loses power and crash lands in desert in Levine. October 18th, small plane crashes south of Ryan Airfield near Tucson. September 12th, no survivors after small plane crash in Havasu City Airport near Lake Havasu City. September 23rd, plane crashes near Page, Arizona. October 1st, helicopter and small plane crash midair in Arizona. June 11th, small plane crashes in North Phoenix neighborhood, pilot injured. June 15th, small plane crashes near airport in Phoenix suburb, killing 1. August 20th, police identify man and women killed in small plane crash near Deer Valley Airport in Phoenix on Monday, August 16th. December 22nd, 2 people, including a young girl, plane crash near Show Low Airport. Single-engine, piston-driven aircraft went down near the Show Low Region Airport. December 31st, Tucson, Arizona. 1 person killed, single-engine. I would like also to get the airport mission statement, the original one. I can't find it. No one will give it to me. It was read here once. I know they want to change it, but it has to do a lot with safety. As long as I'm talking about safety too in a different subject, on Minga Street, the 4-way stop near the school post office, people run that red stop sign all the time. I have witnessed it. I have seen posts on Nextdoor about it. I have no idea why there's not flashing lights. Something could be written on the roadway, stop. Maybe, I hate to say it, but it seems like there's always has to be the accidents before something's done. So with where I live, the planes flying all over the place, right over our house, I don't feel safe. We wouldn't have built or bought our property about 3 years ago had we known about this airport expansion and the aircraft. We noticed it when we moved in last January. It's been a year since we've been in our house. I have no idea why Embry-Riddle is over here. I don't think the city of Cottonwood is desperate for money with all the homes going in and taxpayers paying money. And now you want to get this Dakota in there. That's in bankruptcy. So anyways, I don't feel safe. There's homes going in here, lots of expensive homes, and I think they have no idea about the amount of aircraft flying around. And more aircraft. Now you want to get small jets. You know how loud they are? So anyways, I know people that are moving, and we're considering it too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schneider. Next, we have it's James Sparkman. I know I'm butchering your name, sir, and I apologize. Speakman.
Thank you. It's Spackman.
Spackman.
Yes. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you. Bless you all. May the Lord watch over you today, tomorrow, and the days ahead. Bless you greatly. Mayor Alinsky and city councilors, there are 2 Senate committees that have been issued a report on the Capitol breach on January the 6th. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. And they cited a range of intelligence and law enforcement failures that enabled this to happen. Among the findings in one Senate report that was neither the FBI or the Department of Homeland Security, they issued intelligence bulletins about the potential violence for the day. Afterwards, independent media and others sounded alarms about the presence of unindicted individuals among those who first breached the Capitol. These men seemed to play a central role in the breach and directed people into the building, yet they haven't been arrested, indicted, or identified by the FBI as among the wanted. And who were they? Who knows? Ray Epps from Arizona was one of them. A video was taken on January the 5th, 2021, shows him stating, "Tomorrow we will need to go to the Capitol, into the Capitol." And then the crowd breaks into a chant, "Fed, Fed, Fed," accusing him of being an FBI agent. On January the 6th, Epps could be heard shouting through a megaphone, and I think there's a photo of that, "As soon as our president is done speaking, we're going to the Capitol." Epps is seen again in video footage taken at the media barricades, where it was all barricaded up, and he whispered to somebody, and then they both pushed over the barricade. This first breach of the security perimeter was 20 minutes before Trump finished speaking. Epps is then seen sprinting with the crowd up the steps of the Capitol. After January the 6th, the FBI placed a photo of Epps on a seeking information poster to identify those who breached the Capitol. Well, out of about over 1,500 photos, he was number 16. But when you go back to find them now, that photo is missing. Neither Epps or the FBI nor federal prosecutors have commented on this and his actions that day. Was he working for the FBI? Or why hasn't he been arrested or indicted? A former FBI agent and counterterrorism expert was on the Capitol grounds January 6th. He saw FBI agents that he knew dressed as protesters. He stated, guys would walk by and we'd look at each other and we recognize each other, and two or more right there, and there's another. They were everywhere. Attorneys who represent January 6 defendants say that if Epps or other participants were FBI informants or agents, then the idea that Trump supporters were solely responsible for violence at the Capitol are fraudulent. Once again, it's obvious that the feds are covering up the truth, and the truth will set you free. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speckman. Next up, we have Mr. John Mitchell.
Hi, Mayor and Council. I have a number of questions that are relating to the last speaker. And the reason for me even asking these questions, and one of the things that we're trying to do, is inform the public. A lot of people aren't paying attention really to what's going on sometimes nationally. So if facts are brought out, more importantly, it'll educate more people, and there seems to be a lack of that. So what I've got is some questions relating to what Mr. Speckman just asked. Number one is, why did the government mobilize 26,000 federal troops from across the country to surround the Capitol when there existed no credible threat of violence or activities bordering on insurrection? There was no threat that Washington, D.C. police could not have easily handled, and it was a blatant show of force and an act of intimidation. Number two, why were those troops subjected to FBI vetting, with some of them being rejected? Number three, why is there some 14,000 hours of video footage on the event January 6th that the government refuses to release? What are they afraid of in letting the public see it? More scenes of security guards actually opening the doors and politely ushering in protesters into the Capitol. Number four, why were there so many FBI undercover agents milling around in the crowd, as it's obvious from the videos that we can now see, as well as the testimony of an ex-FBI agent who was on the scene that day? In truth, there's very little threat of domestic terror in this country. Conservatism in America, and America first, is the real focus of the establishment's ire. We are witnessing a war of dissent from the government, but also from the elite culture at large, publishers, authors, editors, and designers calling on the industry to reject books or any other matter relating to this that's of dissent, and to do with the Trump administration. Unfortunately, this book-burning crowd has resurfaced. They've seemingly pledged to do whatever they can to close down any kind of dissent. So I just wanted to say that, because a lot of people just are not paying attention, and maybe you are, but I thought, for the record, for the public to hear these things would be beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. And next up, if we could have someone assist with the microphone, we have Ms. Donna O'Daniel.
Thank you. Mayor Alinsky, and city councilors. In the aftermath of the so-called insurrection on January 6 last year, the U.S. Capitol Police requested support of over 2,000 additional National Guard troops. The National Guard Bureau Chief rejected the request, but was overruled by Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. Military force is necessary to protect the nation against invasion from without and insurrection from within. But in order to prevent politicians and generals from using the military to establish dictatorship, our founding fathers established the checks and balances in our constitutional system to strictly limit the federal government's use of the military, counterbalancing it with the unorganized militias, i.e., the armed citizenry, and the organized state militias under local and state control. They also recognized the fundamental distinction between a military force and a police force. Members of the military are warriors, their job to fight our wars, repel, kill, or capture the enemy. The job of police and sheriff's departments is to protect and to serve. The military's mission and training cannot rightly serve the function of local law enforcement. It would be an occupying army as foreign to us as would be an invading foreign army and unaccountable to local control. Federal statutes and defense directives come into play when the military is used in direct support of law enforcement. Posse Comitatus and Section 275 of Title 10 U.S.C. are federal laws limiting the power of the federal government in using National Guard troops to, quote, execute the laws, including search, seizure, arrest, or other activity, close quote. When state governors are complicit in the co-opting of their sovereign militias by the federal government to be used as an illegal domestic police force, as in 2021, it distorts the balance of power between the state and federal governments. Recognizing the perennial danger of usurpation, the founders wisely reserved police powers to the states and to the people. But the Defense Secretary has ignored the law and thus potentially spawned a constitutional crisis, which should strike fear into the hearts of freedom-loving Americans. Major General Donald McGregor stated, quote, using the military to police the citizenry was anathema to our founders, and further reminds us that this mission of military power is one of history's tragic paths to tyranny and oppression. Please read, support your local police and keep them independent, which I've given to each of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. Next, Mr. Barry Jones.
Mayor and councilors. The narrative of the events of January 6th, 2021 in our nation's capital, according to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and President Joe Biden, and from media, has been that it was an insurrection led by fascists, a dire threat to the very fabric of our nation, the worst assault on, quote, our democracy, unquote, since 9/11, since Pearl Harbor, and even, according to Joe Biden last April, since the Civil War. According to the dictionary, an insurrection is a violent uprising against a government or other established authority. Was that what was going on all summer long in 2020 in dozens of cities across America, where coordinated incitements to violence, looting, and burning were transpiring, which cost billions and claimed more than 20 lives? But the powers that be never called these prolonged events insurrections. Why? In contrast, the January 6, 2021 protest and riot at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. lasted a few hours, caused minimal damage, and the only person that was directly killed was an unarmed female supporter of President Trump, who was shot by a Capitol police officer. It was a political protest that got out of hand. According to Webster's dictionary, fascism is a form of totalitarianism defined as, quote, A system of government characterized by rigid one-party dictatorship and forcible suppression of opposition. That sounds exactly like what is being established in our nation today. To label the flag-waving, peaceful patriots, even the ones participating in that protest that day, as fascist is a serious charge and a gross mischaracterization. How can we trust that our authorities understand the meaning of insurrection and fascism when they don't even know that our founding fathers gave us a constitutional republic and not a democracy? Do they even know the meaning of those two very important words that describe opposing forms of government? They continually refer to our democracy ad nauseum. The Pledge of Allegiance to our flag instructs even grade school children, and to the republic for which it stands. To understand the etiology of the definition of republic versus democracy, please read the booklet, A Republic, if you can keep it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And next we have Mr. Michael Nacito.
Mr. Mayor, council members, good evening. In light of the events of January 6, 2021, at the U.S. Capitol, we should thoroughly investigate whether there is an evidence of treason or sedition. In the response to the violence at the Capitol, the FBI launched one of the most sweeping investigations in its history. Agents have pored over cell phone records, social media, surveillance videos, and police body cams to identify those who were at the Capitol that day. The FBI opened a national tip line and posted videos of photographs of protesters. The most common charge issued by federal prosecutors have been involving 640 individuals was trespassing and remaining in a restricted federal building or grounds. Of the 165 people who've already pled guilty to date, nearly 90% of those cases involved minor misdemeanors. It's important to note that no firearms were recovered from the Capitol on January 6th. Absolutely none, zero. Hundreds of American citizens have been branded as domestic terrorists trying to overthrow the government and have been jailed as political prisoners by an unchecked state power. What happened to the Sixth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, giving American citizens the right of a speedy trial? The political prisoners of January 6th, many kept in solitary confinement under brutal conditions, are still awaiting their trial, even a year later. The feds are running roughshod over Americans' rights with impunity. Is this the United States of America or the communist Red China? I brought a photograph to illustrate that summer. The summer of love, I think, is the mayor of Portland called it. 275 riots occurred that summer in various large cities. The insurrection was just one incident. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nacito. And last we have Mr. Ed Chenoweth.
Howdy, I'm Ed Chenoweth, and this is my face. You might as well get used to it because I'm going to be in yours as long as this charade of this airport being of a service to this community goes on, and until the day you acknowledge that you've made a terrible mistake and you take every last cent that you're going to throw at that airport and begin a real master plan for the Quad Cities of the Camp Corn Cottondona Executive Sky Park and noise bombing range out in Rattlesnake Alley halfway to the freeway. Keep it away as far as you can from all the people. And a couple other things that I think should be commented on is that this is the biggest issue in this community and you just ignore it. And then when I hear you spending time listening to people who, you know, they got the big lie and they got the, you know, it's heck with the scientists trying to save us all from ourselves, and that you would spend more time listening to them than you would having any serious discussion about what the real problem is. Really, it's tough. And none of us like public speaking. We do this only when we're desperate. And I just also have to call out Mr. Matthews there, because last time I was here, you did a great job of staring at a fly on the wall over there the whole time, and I guess that was your way of saying, I'm just ignoring you, buddy. And, you know, my intuition told me that there's a real problem there, and only to learn later on, yeah, you know, you put out emails, oh, there's too many anti-noise people here, we need some pro-noise people coming out. You know, so everything that we're seeing is underhanded, and, you know, I don't know where to begin, but, you know, these, let's get to troglodyte talking point number 43. Oh, you bought by the airport. Yeah, and all the other peaceful people who dealt with the annoyance humbly. A couple dozen flights to somewhere serving somebody. But you changed everything by inviting the Riddler here to circle the valley in a nonstop conveyor belt of noise, increasing flights and noise tenfold. You betrayed thousands of the littlest people who worked their whole lives to have a place in a peaceful, quiet valley for the benefit of literally a handful of well-connected people. There's a lot of shame to go around, and so little time for me to speak truth to power here at the council. These are no marvelous men in their flying machines. That's a century behind the times. They're just noise bullies of the sky. Probably got their shades and a mustache, rugged individualists teaching little Bobby by example that it's just fine to repeatedly noise bomb an entire community. What kind of person would knowingly, repeatedly offend so many, and what kind of person would condone, or worse yet, create that situation? Well, guess I'm looking at them. You let it go, you created it, and there are thousands of people out there who will look back on these years as the noise years. And thanks a lot for coupling it up with COVID, you know, when you want to spend a little time in your backyard with a little peace and quiet. Everybody wants peace and quiet. The guy next door, great thinkers, readers, musicians who hold sound as sacred, creating beauty and truth. You know, I can't imagine if Puccini had to try and write music under this aerial assault. A few things probably wouldn't exist, like Tosca. And I think he might be rolling over his grave to know that everybody's going along with this charade on this thing. So there's just too much to say. I'm sure I'm coming in on 3 minutes. So congratulations, and maybe we got some more big lie people here that you got to spend time with.
Thank you, Mr. Chenoweth. All right, council, let's get to work. Unfinished business is next. Item 1 is consideration of approval of airport commercial operating permits for Dakota Territory Tours, ACC, and Solid Edge Aviation, LLC. Mr. Corbin.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Mr. Tripp, our airport manager, will come up and answer any questions, but this was a carryover from the last session. We asked the applicant to be present. They are present today, just in case there are questions. We also asked them to submit 2 updated applications for both businesses, which they did. We've confirmed with the FAA that they are in good standing, that they are run by Mr. Bruner. The insurance is up to date. Payments are up to date, and as far as we can see, is in good standing. But both Mr. Tripp, myself, and Mr. Bruner and team are here to answer any questions you guys might have.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Tripp?
No, but Mayor, if I may, just a comment.
Sure.
And I wanted to appreciate, I can't even talk tonight. I apologize. I wanted to say thanks, and I appreciate staff, Airport Manager Tripp, Contracts Manager Cook, and then also the Bruner family, because my questions were answered, and then we also got an updated application, and I do appreciate the extra efforts. So I don't have any further questions, but thank you for closing the loop on some of the items that I'd raised at the last meeting. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Mr. Tripp, did you have anything? You're just here to answer questions from
Just
council?
to answer questions, Mayor.
Okay. Any other councils from, question? I'm having the same problem. Any other questions from council for Mr. Tripp? Okay, we have one member of the public who I believe would like to comment on this item, if that's correct, Ms. Howard?
Well, in general terms. Good evening. My name is Len Howard, and thank you, Mayor and council members, for affording this opportunity. I've lived at Pine Shadows about 5 years, and a commercial application and for an operation has been operating out of our airport without a permit to do business. I'm not sure for how long or why. Are there others? From what I understand, and please correct me if this is not the case, our city manager suggested a lease for this operation to be issued for 15 years. 15 years. Instead of month-to-month rent lease until a proposed permit has been properly evaluated for the future of all Cottonwood citizens. 15 years is a long time. Some marriages don't last that long because we are all in a fast-changing situation. My request to the council is to consider a more realistic length of both leases and permits being considered, and consider the ramifications of 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, etc. leases that affect our community long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Howard.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just clarify, the lease was approved by council several months ago for 15 years, which is congruent or standard operating procedures for our airport leases, which we'll save for another day. And for the record, my marriage is going on 28.
I don't see that pardon me, Mayor, I just don't see that that's on the agenda for us to even discuss tonight as a council. I appreciate the update from our city manager, though.
Sure. Any other questions, comments from council? No? Okay, are we ready for a motion?
Make a motion.
Sure.
I move to issue commercial operating permits to Dakota Territory Tours, AAC, and Solid Edge Aviation, LLL.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Holst made the motion and Councilmember Matthews seconded it. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Henry,
Yes.
Councilmember Hulse,
Yes.
Councilmember Currat,
Yes.
Councilmember Matthews,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilden,
Yes.
Mayor Alinsky.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, next up on the agenda is the consent agenda. The following items are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence. So we have two items this evening. One is permits for Cottonwood's Vintage Run event from the town of Clarkdale, Arizona, Arizona State Parks, Dead Horse Ranch State Park, and National Park Service, Tuzagut National Monument. And item two is a new liquor license application number 010, beer and wine, submitted by Tasawar Hussein, agent for Mini Mart located at 607 East Highway 89A. Is there any item that a member of the public or council member would like to have pulled? All right. I then will motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion, Councilmember Henry seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, it's approved. And we roll into new business. The following items are for council discussion. I don't have a second page. Discussion, direction, and thank you. I've only said it so many times I should remember it all. Up first is the presentation of the annual comprehensive financial report. We have Ms. Lennon here. Thank you. That's okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Got really dark there. I am Kirsten Lennon, Financial Services Director, here with you tonight. Tonight we brought before you the 2021 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, which used to be known as the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, but One of the GASB statements this year was to change the name, so that's why the name has changed. Vanessa Burke, who is with the Poon Group, is on Teams and is going to present an overview of the CAFR for you, which is in your, I did it. I said CAFR instead of AC, it's now an ACFR. She's going to go over that, and then also in your packet is the annual expenditure limitation report, the single audit, and the HERF report. So we have Vanessa, and I think she's still muted, so I'm going to try to unmute her really fast. Can you hear us, Vanessa?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Hi, good evening. How are you all? So good evening, Mayor. I guess I can just kick it off. I want to make sure what you're seeing on your screen is the presentation. Is that visible to you?
No.
No, not at this time.
Not yet. I'm sharing. So let's see. Maybe I need to do it again. Give me 2 seconds here. So I am sharing. How about now?
Yes, we have it now.
Is that good? Okay, let me see if I can make you bigger. How about now? Are we good still?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, staff, constituents, in attendance there. I am Vanessa Burke, and I am actually calling in from California. So I hope you guys are having better weather than we're having here. It's very cold. But I have been the engagement partner on this audit for the past few years since we took the account on. Ken Poon is our concurring partner, and he is not with us this evening, but has been involved in the audit. We'll talk about that a little bit in the presentation. And then Andrew Roth, the director, he's normally with me during these presentations. We let him have a vacation this year. And so he is really responsible for managing the day-to-day operations, but is enjoying some time in Mexico. So I'm going to have the pleasure to present the results of the fiscal year audit for the year ended June of 2021. As we all know, 2020, when I presented the report, we had only been under the pandemic for a few months. This audit, I think you'll see, is very positive in terms of results of operation. As I get into it, you'll see that, but it was really a full year of addressing the impacts from the pandemic. So remind me if I don't advance the slides to do it when I get off. So my goals for this evening is really to go over the scope of our work as your auditors. We've been engaged in various capacities by the city to perform multiple services to you. So we like to give a quick reminder of what that entails. I'll go through our required communications under, in this fancy term of AUC 260, is our professional standards issued by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. There's many more than 260 regulations, but this is the one that requires us to come and have a conversation with you to talk about the results of the city. We'll go over our audit responsibilities and management. We'll talk about our approach to the audit, which is a very quick presentation, the audit results, as well as any of the results from the other pieces of scope of work that we have. I'll give a brief overview on the financial statements, which I believe you have the annual comprehensive financial report, which is a lengthy report, but I'll give some synopses of that. Anything that's key, I will talk about, and any of the key pension and OPEB information. So our scope of work really, it starts in spring. So we'll start having, really we end up at the end of the audit having early conversations with your finance team sometime in the spring, and we really get to work on your internal controls really towards the end of the fiscal year. So, you know, as you're sitting here at January of 2022, we'll roll forward to around May, June timeframe. We will start to do internal control work. And that is really where we start the audit for the annual comprehensive financial report. And then it ends sometime around December. So we cover the annual audit of the annual comprehensive financial report. We also perform the audit under the uniform guidance, which is issued by the federal government over single audit. That actually kicks in when you have more than $750,000 in not receipts of federal funding, but expenditure of federal funding, and you're well over that and have been for a number of years. The other reports that we issue and that are included in your packet, these are considered examination engagements, and these are compliance-oriented reviews, or attestation is what they're governed by, our attestation standards. So we're attesting to the city's compliance with the requirements in laws and regulations. So we're looking at your completion of your annual expenditure limitation report, as well as that the Highway User Revenue Fund expenditures, we sample those and we ensure that those are in compliance with the guidelines issued by state of Arizona. The last part of our service includes other non-audit services, and we bring these to your attention because they can, if audit firms perform non-audit services and also the audit, they can impair independence. We do assist in the preparation of your annual comprehensive financial report, and so that automatically becomes a impact, or what I would say it elevates the risk of independence being impaired, and that's because we then have a familiarity threat. We're preparing the financial statements and we're also auditing them. So what we are required to do as part of that standard is build in safeguards for that. So one of those safeguards that we do is that Kirsten Lennon and her team take responsibility for those financial statements. They review them, they check them, they compare them back to the books and records of Cottonwood, and take ultimate responsibility for the disclosures and amounts in there. In addition, they oversee our work in the preparation of that. So they check it, math check it, etc. The second thing that we do as a firm, and not all firms do this, is we require, in addition to me as your engagement partner, we require a second partner review on the audited financial statements, as well as a third partner goes through our engagement quality control review. The third partner is kind of the final, unassociated with the engagement at all, cold read of all the reports, making sure that they're accurate. The next two slides I will go over is to review communications required by our professional standards. That's required to be discussed with you at least annually, and includes discussions with management, city council, and really ensures an opportunity for us to have a two-way communication. In addition, during the year, we have communications with many in management, and we do confirmation process with those on city council. And so we do have other opportunities where we have been communicating with you during the audit. So for this required communication, oops, sorry, I advanced that too fast. I'm turning a page and turning the slide at the same time. We are required as part of that communication to communicate to you any of the significant accounting policies adopted by the city during the year. And the reason for that disclosure is because it can impact the comparability of the financial information year over year. Those financial policies as adopted by the city are included in Note 1 to the financial statements. I encourage you to read those. That tells you really the story behind how the numbers end up on the financial statements and why they're there. And we look at those and include a disclosure that tells you which standards you've implemented. So during the year, you implemented GASB statement number 80, as well as GASB statement number 90 and number 98. Of those, 84 had only a slight adjustment to the financial statements, very minor. GASB 90, GASB statement number 90, majority equity interest, did not have an impact. And GASB statement number 98 was really the most significant in that it changed the naming of the report to an annual comprehensive financial report. And our Governmental Accounting Standards Board, in contemplation of the things that are going on in the world today, realized that old naming of the report could be deemed to be something derogatory in another nation. And so our nation responded by saying, we're going to address that and change the naming of the report. So it really didn't have an overall financial impact, but from being sensitive to others, I think it was really a large change, and I'm really proud of the GASB for stepping up to do that. The other area is significant estimates. You really have estimates that are embedded in the financial statements. We talk to you about those annually because estimates can be subject to change. And in addition, they're supported by significant assumptions that are also subject to change. So, for example, the fair value of investments is subject to market risk. And we categorize your investments by level and by type of investment so that you, as a reader of the financial statements, can understand where changes in markets could have an impact on the value of your assets as well, which then affects your assets overall and your ending net position as a city. Depreciation on capital assets is also a significant account for you. It's a material number on your financial statements. You have heavy investment in infrastructure, repairs, maintenance, and the estimate of depreciation on those capital assets, though you don't earn money and earn a profit as a business because you're a government agency, its depreciation methods for useful life and cost are important in order to ensure that you've got sufficient recovery of those assets over time. Net pension liability and net OPEB liability, various assumptions are included in both of those estimates because there's things like mortality and discount rate that are all used, and some of those you aren't responsible for setting, but you have an outside pension plan that is. And so the various assumptions are disclosed in the financials. We look at those. We've got a couple slides later where you'll see what the sensitivity could be for a 1% change in the discount rate. And I normally present that annually to you. So sensitive disclosures, the things that we say if you're going to take a look at them, these are the ones we would look at. I always put note 1 in here. I say it's sensitive. You've got nearly a 200-page report. But really just understanding the policies that are set by your agency is important to understand. Note 6, this is excess consideration provided for the acquisition of the water agencies. That gets amortized over a number of years, and we put this on, eventually this will be amortized off and it'll probably drop off this slide. But I really like to put it in it just to say this is kind of the goodwill that you paid for that. That's getting amortized over time. But again, you acquired multiple water agencies, and that was an important endeavor for your city and the growth of the area. Notes 10 and note 14. Note 10 is your pension plan and your OPEB. Those are material amounts to your financial statements, so we include that as a significant disclosure because it has the underlying estimates and how those numbers are determined. Those are determined by an actuarial study. And those amounts are booked based on the actuary who is the expert, but we do take a look at it and compare that. Last is note 14, subsequent events, American Rescue Plan Act. You'll see when I talk about the single audit, you were a recipient of CARES Act. You were also a recipient under the American Rescue Plan Act of significant federal funding. And so we put that in as a subsequent event. Because you were approved for it and will be receiving separate tranches of that amount, and they are significant to your financial statements. Next, we communicate the hard parts. If there were any errors in the financial statements as presented to us for the audit, or any errors that we didn't deem to be material but below that threshold and above a really trivial amount, we would have to communicate those to you, and I'm really proud to report that we did not have any of those this year. And I think that's an important milestone. We were the new auditor several years ago. We had audit adjustments in past years, and to not have any, we've really increased our communication during the year and are working with your finance staff so that we can get things corrected before we come there. That's what we like to see. So congratulations to you on that. Consultants with other accountants, significant difficulties or disagreements with management. We did not have any of those during the audit, and we are not aware of any consultation with other accountants. We would call that opinion shopping, meaning management or finance consulted with other accountants in order to get a certain type of audit opinion. Entered into a transaction they thought we would audit and question, and consulted with other accountants on that. We did not have any of those during this year's audit. Audit responsibilities. So I have a very quick slide here. I like to bring this up so that we really have a distinction in the audit. In the olden days, when I first started auditing 30 years ago, they used to think that the auditors were responsible for the prep of the financials and post-end run and all those days. We've now really aligned our responsibilities into our appropriate channels. And so I'll only point out a few of these, but you know, management is definitely responsible. Even though we assist in the preparation of the financial statements, they have that responsibility for getting that prepared and looking at ensuring they have a good, solid understanding of it. And then we have to perform the audit over those financial statements. And about the third way down is adopting sound accounting policies and establishing and maintaining internal controls over financial reporting and compliance. Those are required to be done by management. Our responsibility is really to assess audit risk in terms of internal control over financial reporting and compliance for purposes of planning our audit procedures. So we look at risk to the organization based on your control structure, based on the policies that you've adopted, and we design our procedures and our tests, including surprise tests, in order to ensure that our audit is adequately planned and will address those areas of risk. If we were to find any problems in those areas in internal control or financial reporting, we would report those to you as part of our single audit. You'll see when I get to that section that we do not have any internal control findings to report. That doesn't mean we don't communicate with Kirsten and her team on things to improve. They just don't rise to a level of what we consider to be a reportable condition over financial reporting. Approach to the audit. So briefly, I just talked about our initiation of the audit and the planning meeting. We do that really kind of in that June, July timeframe. It's really fluid pretty much over the last 6 months we've been working on it. A year ago, when COVID hit, we had to move to a completely remote environment, which was very, I wouldn't say it's a significant transition for our firm, but is really a new way to conduct audits. We're used to coming out on site to your audit, to your buildings and walking through your halls. And for us not to have that a year ago was a very strange place to be. I think we've gotten used to it. That doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. And we're finding, for all intents and purposes, we like more of a hybrid. A lot of the work can be done off-site. You know, I don't need to necessarily be there to look at uploaded financial, bank statements, but I do like to be there for purposes of really in this risk assessment controls review stage. But when we get to the year end, this next stage, phase 3, where we're really looking at account balances and requesting support for those, a lot of that can be done off-site. So even though COVID was hard, I think it's really testing us to try to be more efficient and more effective in our audits and really focusing on kind of those high-risk areas. Reporting and project closure and closeout, that's really where we're at right now. We generally finish the audit and finish the reporting in the December timeframe. We will roll right into that. And the reason we do that is because you file your audit with the Government Finance Officers Association, and you do that in an order to receive an award of excellence. You in fact did receive that for last year. This report has been submitted it's got to be submitted by December 31st. We anticipate you'll receive it again. Again, we're not the reviewer of that, but we feel like you meet all the terms, additional requirements over and above the Governmental Accounting Standard Board in order to receive that award. Audit results. So our responsibility, as we indicated, was to perform an audit over those financial statements. We do that by opinion unit, so your government-wide, governmental activities, your enterprise activities, and your fiduciary activities. Those financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects, and what does that mean to you as a city? It really means the next 4 bullets, the things we talked about. Your financial statements are in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles issued by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. That's who issues your regulatory guidance. Your accounting policies have been consistently applied, and where they've changed, we've taken those into account. Your estimates are reasonable, and your disclosures are properly reflected in the financial statements for the numbers on the net position and statement of activities. So I'm going to move next into the compliance areas, Highway User Revenue Fund and the Annual Expenditure Limit Report. You have that in front of you. Those are in compliance, and we did not have any findings to report, or any that we found that we needed to report. They would be in that audit if we had any. The next is the single audit. In the single audit, we issued unmodified opinions on all major programs. And that means that the city complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements that are direct and material to those programs. This year, you had total federal expenditures of $4.5 million. And just so you, for context, last year you only had $2.4 million. So you had additional federal funding this year that you hadn't had in the past. The program that we tested and met the terms to be tested as a major program was your Coronavirus Relief Fund, and it totaled $1.4 million out of that $4.5 million. It was new funding that I mentioned previously, and that was about 31% of your federal funding. And because you're a low-risk auditee, the minimum threshold we get to is about 20%. That's the requirement, is you have to audit 20%. If you were a high-risk auditee, meaning you had findings in past 2 years, then you'd have to audit 40%. But the feds changed those rules under uniform guidance. Last year, the program tested was the Department of Transportation funding, and that last year was also about $1.4 million. So we swapped out those programs. We didn't look at Department of Transportation. We looked at the new program that was higher risk, and we did not have any findings. Overview of the financial statements. So this is the governmental activities. So your government-wide financial statements include basic financial statements, and that consists of your government-wide financial statements, which possesses both your governmental activities and your enterprise activities. And then after that, and that's on a full accrual basis, so those fund financial statements have all long-term assets, all long-term liabilities, so all your pension and OPEB, as well as all your infrastructure assets. Your fund level financial statements include your governmental funds, your proprietary fund types, and your fiduciary funds. And those, the governmental funds are on a modified accrual basis, so they do not include your long-term assets and long-term liabilities. Your proprietary funds, water and wastewater, those are proprietary fund financials and are also on full accrual basis. So they just roll from the fund right up to the government wide. Fiduciary, same thing, full accrual, but it doesn't get rolled up to the government wide. It's its own statement by itself. So what you're seeing here is your net position of your governmental activities, not your enterprise activities. So you can see your total assets this year, you ended the year at $73.2 million. You had total deferred outflow of resources of $24.4 million. I'll talk about why that increased so much. Your liabilities were $68.2 million as compared to the prior year of $46.1, and your deferred inflow of resources was $926 versus $1.5 million. Total assets increased by about $11.3 million, and again, that's a combination of things. When you look at the bottom line, you can see your total net position went to 28.5 million from around 19.6 million. So you had about an $8.9 million increase. Some of that was your sales tax increase, and that went up by about 2.8 million this year overall, as well as your state share went up by about 0.4 million. So that was a pretty substantial increase in sales tax. I'm assuming a lot of people out of state were coming in state, is what I'm seeing with some of my other clients in Arizona, where we were in lockdown in California. that people were coming and vacationing in Arizona because your rules for masking and your mandates were much less restrictive than in neighboring states. Your grant revenue increased by 2.8 million, which also increased that. And then you also had a gain on sale of assets of about $1 million. So this big number here, the deferred outflow of resources, the reason that changed by so much, the 19.2 million, is due to deferred. It's basically the contributions you made this year to the pension plan from the pension obligation bonds gets deferred on the balance sheet of the governmental activities for those associated plans in there, and then it'll get recognized in pension expense in the next fiscal year. So, and that's just the nature of how we measure the pension liabilities. So that activity of that pension bonding won't flow through your pension expense as a contribution until next year. So overall net investment in capital assets, your long-term assets are in your total assets. You can see that went up by 1.3 million. Your restricted went from 4.1 million to 9.2 million, or about a $5 million increase. Most of that is due to that that funding at the end of the year for the first tranche of the ARPA money. You can see your unrestricted net assets went from 11.6 million to 9 million, so a decrease of unrestricted deficit of 2.6. So you had improved operations there. We'll see that on the next slide. So overall, year over year in your governmental activities, you can see your total program revenues are 9.9 million versus 7.6, so a total of 2.2. Your operating grants went up by about 2.7. I know you had the CARES Act grant, which is around 1.4 million. Your DOT grant also went up in the prior year, so that makes up the majority of it. There's other changes, but that was the bulk of it. To that number for total program revenues is offset by expenses, which is 29.2 versus 27.6. Your expenses went up by about 1.5 million. Overall net cost of services, though, is down because of the additional operating grants. So your general revenues went up from 23.2 to 28.2, so a total of 5 million. So you can see that's where some of the additional sales tax revenue is flowing through. So, did I get to, yeah, okay, hang on, whoops, I advanced too fast. So overall change in net position this year as opposed to last year is really an improved bottom line of 5.7 million. Business type activities, again, we saw an improvement. Again, this is a full year of COVID. Total assets are 71.6 million, deferred outflows of 4.3 million, liabilities of 25, small deferred inflow. Again, deferred inflow resources are related to pensions and OPEB, resulting in a net position of 50.8 million versus prior year 47.1. So we see an increase of about 3.8 million. Most of that is sitting in assets of 2.6. Again, your restricted net assets went up by 1.8 and your overall unrestricted up by 2.9. Capital assets are being depreciated, so we see that number coming down. You can see here, year over year, your increase in charges for services, 12.7 versus 11.3. Again, you charge for water, wastewater. We're seeing the increase in rates here go through. And then your expenses really stayed flat. And so you kept your expenses, I would say, relatively flat year over year. So ultimately, your bottom line has improved from 3.5 to 3.7. So very slight, but still an improvement. General fund. So the general fund is your fund that operates all your general activities. So police, fire, all your public works, etc. You can see that your assets went from 9.2 million to 19.5 million, so an increase of 10.3 million. Liabilities stayed relatively flat. Total fund balance went from 8 million to 18.3 million. And so you can see your unassigned fund balance went up by 7 million. Your total commitments went up by 3.1 million due to your new reserve policy, as well as the assigned fund balance of $1 million that stayed flat. You left that alone. So overall, you see a total liability, deferred inflow, and fund balance increase of 10.3 million over the prior year. You can see this number here. And this is what is making up those numbers. So the largest piece is the other financing sources and uses of 20.8 million. That's your pension obligation funding coming through. And then you can see overall your revenues went up by 3.7. Your expenditures went up by 17.5, right, in your general fund, because you're moving money out for your contributions. And so your revenue over your expenditures was 10.6 million, but that gets offset by the other financing sources. Key highlights. Net cost of services year over year is relatively flat. Again, we're looking at governmental activities. I like to look at this because it tells me how much your taxes and state shared revenue are covering cost of services, net of things that you can somewhat control. You can somewhat control your charges for services, your operating grants, and your capital grants based on your drive to deliver more operating and capital grants and apply for more operating grants. So the more operating and capital grants that you have in here helps offset those costs of services, which then has to be supported by taxes. So in this case, your taxes are in excess of that amount. So that net cost of services represents about 72% of your total tax and state shared revenue. Last year was about 87%. So you're using less taxes to run your city. Unassigned fund balance this year went up from 6.9 to 14.1. I guess I could include that assigned fund balance in here if it's for contingency. But GFOA recommends about 2 months of reserves just as a baseline. Every city is different, but you're really hovering around that 30% range for your general fund, which is a good cushion, I think, to have when you're looking at your total expenditures going from 20.5 to 38. So this is up relative to your total expenditures, but your ratio is still good. This is your aggregate net pension and OPEB liability. Your OPEB costs are embedded in your contribution rate, and this is for the A.R.S. plan. As you can see at the top, it's a cost-sharing plan with other agencies in the state. The current discount rate for that is in the middle, 7.5%. That's where we book your liability from. So your total pension liability is currently $13.2 million. You see your health benefit supplemental plan is negative $54,900. That means that's an OPEB asset, and that's a long-term disability plan has an OPEB liability of 58. So these two almost net against each other for a total obligation outstanding of about 13.3 million for A.S.R.S. If the A.S.R.S. was to increase the discount rate to 8.5%, your liability would go down to 9 million. If they were to decrease it by 6.5%, it would go up by a substantial amount to 18.2, almost $5 million. So that's significant. This is your Psprs agent plan. So this is not a cost sharing plan. This is your own plan. Right now, we're currently using a lower discount rate than on A.S.R.S. at 7.3%, and that's what the actuary advises. So you've got multiple tiers in these plans. You can see your pension cost. We're again looking to the middle. We record your unfunded liability based on that middle column. So your total aggregate is 16.7 million. Of that, 12.6 is related to pension for the police plan. You've got a OPEB asset for that of 108,000. You've got a fire pension unfunded liability of 4.2 and a OPEB liability of 41,000. Again, 1% rate. You've got 16.7 versus 12.7. You'd see almost a 4 million swing in that direction, and you'd see almost a $5 million swing going to 6.3%. Again, I don't think they're going to change these rates. I don't hear any talk at the state about that at this point. I think everybody's comfortable with the way the market has been over the last few years. Psprs also has cost sharing plan. This is a very, very small plan. You only have about $1,700. I probably could have taken the slide out, but just so you know, you do have a little dinky Psprs cost sharing plan, and your unfunded liability is $1,700. And with that, that concludes prepared remarks, and I will open it up to any questions. My contact information is on this slide as well, for both Andrew and I.
All right, very good. Thank you, Ms. Burke. Any questions from council for Ms. Burke?
I have maybe a couple or three, but I prefer to wait till the retreat.
Sure. Okay. Well, I just want to extend my appreciation to our manager and, of course, Kirsten Lennon for, I think, 2 or 3 years in a row now. We've gotten excellent, no dings against us at all. So thank you very much for managing the ship.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I get zero credit. Kirsten gets all the credit for that. And this is through a year of being short-staffed and going through some... I like that voice better than mine, but...
Oh, there you go. Okay, now I can hear. Sorry.
No worries. So anyway, so a big thank you to Kirsten and her team. She lost her accountant to Sedona this year, but...
It's me right now.
It is, and she's handling it.
Well, you're doing a great job, and thank you. I know we're a fiscally conservative council, but you've done a great job on our behalf, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All right.
agreed, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, and thank you, Ms. Burke. Good seeing you.
Good seeing. Do I need to stay for the motion, or? does it
Might
have
as
to
well,
be-
or if you want to. I mean, you've come all this way.
I traveled through time.
All right, council?
I would move to accept the city's annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year ending June 30, 2021 as presented.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Henry made the motion, and Councilmember Wilden seconded it. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Henry?
Yes.
Councilmember Hulse?
Yes.
Councilmember Currat?
Yes.
Councilmember Matthews?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilden?
Yes.
Mayor Alinsky?
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, very good. Thank you. Good night. All right. Poor Town Manager Guthrie, you're going to have to go through this all over again, aren't you? All right, up next is Resolution Number 3119, approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Town of Clarkdale for the co-location and sharing of municipal court facilities and staff.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to tag team with our city attorney on this one, who helped get us across the finish line. But for the community's knowledge, when I came here almost 3 years ago, this was actually brought up by a few different people. And the former town manager of Clarkdale approached me before she left, and we talked about co-locating the Clarkdale court into our courthouse. So the new town manager, Susan Guthrie, welcome to the Valley. Welcome back to the Valley, I should say, who's in the audience if you have questions, but is making this actually come to fruition, which is this IGA that moves their court services into our courthouse. They will cover all the costs. We've worked out the staffing plan. We've worked out the facility plan. We think that the Clarkdale residents will be welcomed in our courthouse. We'll put up the name of Clarkdale on the outside of our building. They'll have their own window, and they'll receive services from staff that will be City of Cottonwood staff, but they will be serving only Clarkdale residents. It will be up to the town of Clarkdale to enter an IGA with the magistrate of their choosing, which we currently assume will be our magistrate, who they would be lucky to have. Just going to throw that out there. But that'll be a separate agreement between the town and the judge. That way, the court still reports to their town council, and that way they can still have control over services and a level of customer services and all of those kinds of things. But again, no real cost impact to our city. HR has looked through this. They're okay with it. Our finance directors looked through this. Okay. David will politely do what's asked. He'll make this building come to fruition. But we're excited about this new opportunity. As you guys know, we have a beautiful court facility with lots of space. So we don't see this an issue. But I'm here. Steve's here. Susan is here, the town manager, if council has any questions.
All right. Council, any questions? None? Super. All right. We do have our magistrate here, Judge Kelly. If you wanted to say a few words, you're more than welcome to. No pressure.
My question to you would be, how do you feel about this?
Well, and that's what I was going to speak to. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I feel real good about this. I know what kind of service, if a court can be a service, that we provide to Cottonwood residents and everybody else who travels through our court, no matter where they live. And I think Clarkdale will benefit tremendously. And we're ready to accept the challenge. You know, essentially, we get a 5-day court, depending on how you view it, for both Cottonwood and Clarkdale. That's excellent. So that's my general feeling about it.
Great. All right. Thank you, Judge Kelly. Well, again, I'm excited about this opportunity too. So just makes a lot of sense for both our communities to work together on this. So, Council, we're ready for a motion. Go ahead.
I move to approve resolution number 3119.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Wilden made the motion. Councilmember Henry seconded it. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Henry.
Yes.
Councilmember Halls.
Yes.
Councilmember Curott.
Yes.
Councilmember Matthews.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilden.
Yes.
Mayor Linsky.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, great. Please read resolution number 3119 by title only.
Resolution number 3119, a resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Cottonwood, Yavapai County, Arizona, approving an intergovernmental agreement with the town of Clarkdale, Arizona, for the co-location and shared use of city municipal court facilities and staff. Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. Okay, last item this evening for discussion is ratification and waiver of the city's procurement policy for the purchase of 2 heart monitors defibrillators for the Cottonwood Fire Department. Evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Thank you for having us here this evening. Opportunity to go over this. As you just read there, we would like the opportunity to give you some information and answer any questions that you may have regarding this purchase of the new equipment. These monitors are an essential item that is needed due to a variety of different reasons within the city. As far as our service provision goes, we've had, as all of you are fully aware, with our changing dynamic in our environment here with COVID and everything else that we've seen, increase in call volume and things of that nature has made this a necessary item for us to pursue. This will bring a far better product to our customers, our citizens that we serve, to make sure that they have their needs met at a greater level. I do have a couple of gentlemen here this evening if you do have questions on those. They were specifically a part of that entire process as far as they were finding the information. In addition to that, this portion for the sole source was outlined. I believe there was some information that was supplied within the documentation you received to kind of describe what that looks like with this individual corporation, this company that we utilize, and we've had a long working relationship with. They have been wonderful in their service to us, and they also were providing this highest level of technology that was available as part of that we were looking to achieve. We were unable to determine that elsewhere.
Okay.
Do you have any questions that I can answer for you, or?
Questions, Council?
No, as I've read, it looks like you've done your due diligence, so I'm pleased.
Okay. All right, any other discussion at all? No, I'd entertain a motion. Sure.
I move to waive the city's procurement policy and authorize the purchase of 2 Philips Tempest Pro A.R.S monitor and defibrillators from Interspec Medical Solutions on a sole source basis at a total cost of $66,521.68.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Matthews made the motion. Councilmember Holst seconded it. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Henry.
Yes.
Councilmember Halls.
Yes.
Councilmember Curott.
Yes.
Councilmember Matthews.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilden.
Yes.
Mayor Linsky.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, I move that we pay the claims and adjustments.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion. Councilmember Matthews seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
And I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion. Luckily, Holst seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.